Breaking news, Ukraine claiming full control over a Russian town amid reports that its soldiers are rapidly advancing even further into Russian territory. Now, this is all part of a surprise and frankly unprecedented incursion that Russian military bloggers say has now spread about 30 miles beyond that initial site of Ukraine's attack. Some of the video we have here shows what appears to be a column of burned out Russian military vehicles littered with bodies. Russia now declaring a state of emergency in the region where the fighting is taking place. Out front now, investigative journalist Christo Grosev. It's great to have you back with us tonight. So this is a highly fluid situation, really surprising in a lot of ways. And I do want to talk about the timing in the moment. But first, can you just bring us up to speed on what you're learning? I mean, this has been a very active few days. So where do things stand right now?
Well, Russian bloggers call it a fog of war situation. They cannot confirm exactly what number of villages and towns are under Ukrainian control, but there's a sort of a fledgling consensus that about 100 square miles already are under Ukrainian control. That's not nothing. That's more than the territory that Ukraine was able to recapture during their surge, the counter-offensive they did. That's a lot of territory. But it doesn't even matter, because if they manage to stay there, even if they don't take any additional territory, and we see evidence they're entrenching, they're bringing overnight new equipment, engineering equipment, to make sure that they're in defensive position, which is always harder to attack. If they retain this for even a month, they're causing serious damage to the reputation of the Kremlin. And this is really what they're trying to achieve. One of the things they're trying to achieve is to cause sort of a feeling of fallibility at the Kremlin or near the Kremlin. Because, I mean, I've talked to a lot of Kremlin insiders who are saying, well, we're sitting on the fence and waiting to see if there's clear evidence we're going to win this war, we'll continue supporting Putin. If there's no evidence we're going to win this war, we can't wait 25 years to get off sanctions. So we might do something about it.
Do something, meaning some sort of a coup?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always been in the cards.
Right.
The collective Putin around him has all the inventory to organize a coup.
Which would be, I mean, in and of itself, a huge deal. So that's from the Russian side, right? But when we look at this from the Ukrainian side, I'm so curious about the timing. Why now?
Well, first of all, it was a surprise. So why now could have been a question we can ask anytime. But now there are at least two reasons that I can see. And I've talked to Ukrainian military officials who never shared this with anyone. They didn't share it with intelligence services, not even with the United States, for fear of this, of being actually asked not to do it, maybe. But there are two reasons. One is that they have now the equipment, and in particular the drones that were extremely important for this, for covering the advance of this position. And they've had a whole new generation of drones that are AI-driven and AI-supported. And they only got those in the last 2 months, in June and July. A lot of them are home developed. They're developed in Ukraine. But the second reason is that actually they want to make it impossible for them to be pushed into unfavorable negotiations in case there's a change of a cabinet in the United States, in case Trump comes to power. They've been very fearful that Trump may force them into a forced negotiation, which will end up settling the border at the current positions of the front line, which would be very unfavorable to Ukraine. But with such an advance, even with small territory on Russian territory, a small advance on Russian territory, they're in a position to bargain a complete swap of territories, not limited to the number of kilometers or miles they've taken, but in general.
So it gives them a little bargaining power, or a lot of bargaining power, depending on the way you look at it. I know we're a little tight on time, but the way this fighting has been raging, what you told me about, inside Russia, what you're hearing, what do you think the response from Putin is going to be, especially if they're able to hold on to this territory?
Well, again, he's scrambling to find an appropriate response, and you have to understand that his reputation within the population has suffered because he hasn't been able to provide even the logistical humanitarian support for the people to be moved out of those territories. And even today, after 2 days of inactivity, they're offered $100 a family for all of their cost of relocation, which is obviously not sufficient. There are fears that he might lash out and decide to finally try to use the nuclear tactical option. But again, something that a high-ranking official told me at the start of the war, a Russian official said, Putin can only use the nuclear option if he's sure that people will follow his command. And he can only use it if he's in a strong position, if he's winning the war. Because if he's not winning the war, somebody is not going to press a button. And then that's the end of Putin.
Wow. I mean, there is so much going on in that region, in that moment. It's really good to have you here, and I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing the inside reporting, too. All of this, of course, coming just a week after that historic prisoner swap where Russia released 16 people. One of them was Vladimir Kara-Murza, whose story we have been following on Outfront. And I just want to note that both he and his wife, Evgenia, will be joining Aaron right here Monday night at 7.